Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep on something we all hope we won't need too often. Crisis leadership. But the thing is,
Right.
we probably need these skills way more than we think.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, crises aren't always these big,
Right.
front page news kind of events. And the book we're looking at today,
Yeah?
Pragmatic Optimist by Dr. Daniel Monehin.
That's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He actually points out that, get this, 70% of crises
Huh?
start
Oh.
inside organizations, internal stuff.
So this is like for everyone, not just like
Totally.
CEOs and, world leaders.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone who's ever led a team, a project, or even just like, had a family argument, this stuff is relevant.
Absolutely. So that's what we're diving into today. And this book
Mhm.
has this really helpful section on, what is it?
The top 10 responses to avoid in a crisis. Basically, it's like learning leadership by knowing what not to do. Kind of a cool approach.
Okay, I like that. Like a crisis hack. So hit us with number one. What's the first thing we got to watch out for?
Well, it's probably the most obvious one, but that doesn't make it less dangerous. Panic. Totally natural reaction, but it's like a virus in a team. Spreads so fast and leads to the worst decisions.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in like a meeting and something goes wrong and suddenly everyone's talking over each other? No one can think straight.
Oh, 100%. And everyone just wants to do something, anything, even if it's the wrong thing.
Right. And nothing good comes out of that.
Exactly. The book actually uses this example of Primark, the clothing retailer, you know them.
Yeah, yeah.
So when COVID hit, they didn't have online shopping set up at all.
Oh, no.
Right. Went from like $800 million a month in sales to zero overnight because
Right.
they weren't ready.
That's brutal. Talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah, and it kind of leads right into the second response to avoid, which is delay. Like, even if you have the info to act, hesitating can be just as bad as panicking.
Oh, I bet we've all done that at some point, right? A problem at work that gets ignored and then blows up, or even just like putting off a tough conversation and it just gets worse.
Absolutely. Monehin, the author, uses this big example of the U.S. CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield, who basically said the whole world was unprepared for COVID. Major leadership failure on a global scale because of delay.
Wow. That's pretty sobering. So we've got panic, delay. What's next on this don't do list?
Well, this one's tricky because it's so tempting. Denial, just not acknowledging the problem, hoping it'll go away.
Yeah, it's like ignoring that check engine light, right?
Exactly. And eventually, the car breaks down. In a crisis, denial just stops you from actually dealing with the root cause. Monehin tells this story of an executive who, even years after a company crisis, refused to wear company lapel pins.
Really?
Yeah, he just saw so much hypocrisy during that time that he couldn't be a part of it anymore.
So it really stuck with him, huh?
Oh, yeah. Denial doesn't just stop you from solving problems, it can really mess people up long term.
So we've got panic, delay, denial. These are tough because they're so human.
Oh, totally. And that doesn't even cover the next one, which is deflection. Basically blame shifting.
Oh, yeah, classic. Pass the buck. But how do you know if you're being accountable or just being made the scapegoat? Where's the line?
That's the key, right? Taking ownership means you learn from it, you focus on solutions. Being a scapegoat is just about protecting someone else, usually higher up.
It's like if a sports team loses, they figure out what went wrong to get better, not just blame the goalie, right?
Perfect analogy. Deflection stops the whole organization from learning. Plus, it destroys trust, which you really need in a crisis.
Makes sense. So deflecting blame is a lose-lose. No one wins.
Right. Okay, so number 5 on our list of things to avoid is indecision.
Oh, I can see how that would be paralyzing. Especially if there's no easy answer, you just get stuck.
Yeah. I love that Mike Tyson quote, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Crises rarely go how you expect, so you gotta be able to adapt.
That's so true.
And Monehin really stresses it's better to make a decision, any decision, and then adjust as you go.
So it's like action beats perfection.
100%. You got to be willing to course correct. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Yeah, exactly. It's more about, getting things moving and figuring it out as you go. Okay, so this next one, number 6, is kind of sneaky. Disengagement. Like the leader just checks OUT.
Oh, I've seen that happen. Not good. It's like demoralizing for the whole team. No one knows what's going on.
Right. You need the leader there, especially when things are tough, to like give direction and keep everyone on track.
Totally. It's like that whole captain goes down with the ship thing. You can't just abandon everyone when the storm hits.
Exactly. Okay, number 7. This one can be tough to swallow for some leaders. Dictatorship. thinking you have to control everything.
Oh, I can see how that would backfire. No one wants to work in an environment where they can't speak up, especially when things are going sideways. Right. And you need creativity in a crisis. You got to be able to adapt. Monehin gives this great example of a health and safety executive who had this terrible accident at a plant. And instead of freaking out and taking over, he actually empowered his team, gave them clear roles, goals, and they resolved it super fast.
So it's like trusting your people to do their jobs, right? Even, or maybe especially when things are chaotic.
Absolutely. Okay, this next one is a real morale killer. Discouragement. Being negative, constantly criticizing.
Oh, yeah, I hate that. It's like a coach just yelling at the players all the time. No one's going to play their best like that. You just get scared to do anything.
Right. You got to build people up, especially in a crisis. Focus on what's going right, celebrate the wins,
Yeah, give people that boost they need to keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, number 9. This one's huge, especially these days. Deception, basically. Lying.
Ugh, yeah. Trying to cover things up, protect your reputation, short-term thinking that always backfires.
Oh, 100%. Look what happened with Theranos. They built this whole company on lies,
Yeah.
and it all came crashing down.
Yeah, it's like, think about it personally. If someone you trusted lied to you, would you ever trust them again? Same with a company, a leader, anyone.
Transparency is everything.
Totally. Okay, and lastly, we've got, this is a tough one, despair, leading from a place of hopelessness.
Oh, man. If the leader's given up, everyone else is going to give up too, right?
Exactly. Monehin uses this example of a guy who, like, at the first sign of trouble, sold all his stock in his own company.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it caused a total panic. Everyone else pulled out too, and the company went bankrupt.
So the leader's attitude, like, really matters.
No, big time. Think about Viktor Frankl, though, right? Finding meaning in a concentration camp. Like, if he can find hope in that situation, we can find it anywhere.
That's powerful. So that's the whole list, huh? 10 things not to do in a crisis, but just knowing what not to do isn't enough, right? Like, what should you do instead?
Great question. And it's something Monehin really encourages us to think about. What's the opposite, the antidote to each of these pitfalls?
Okay, so for panic, maybe it's like
Yeah.
staying calm.
Yeah. Taking a deep breath, assessing the situation clearly, being the steady one that everyone else can look to.
Yeah, being that calm in the storm. What about for delay?
Decisiveness. Gather the info you need, and then ACT. Even if it's not perfect, it's better than nothing.
Got to be willing to pivot too, right?
Okay?
Change course if you need to.
Totally. Okay, what about denial?
Well, the opposite of denying something is accepting it, right? Even if it sucks.
Exactly. Face reality head on. That's the only way to actually fix it. And for deflection.
Taking responsibility.
Ownership, yeah. It's
Yeah.
about learning from mistakes, focusing on solutions, not blame.
And creating a culture where people feel safe to admit when they messed up.
Exactly. Okay, what about indecision?
Maybe. Courage to make a call and go with it.
Yes. Trust your gut, take a chance.
What about disengagement?
Presence. Being there for your team, physically and emotionally, like you're in it with them.
That captain on deck, leading by example.
Right. And for dictatorship.
Empowerment, right. Letting your team use their skills.
100%. Trusting people to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, what about discouragement?
Inspiration, like being a cheerleader for your team.
Yes. Focus on the positive, celebrate the wins. Okay, deception, that's easy.
Honesty.
Absolutely. And finally, despair.
Hope. Believing things can get better.
Exactly. So it's not just about avoiding those bad reactions. It's about actively building those good ones.
Right. It's like we have a choice, right? We can react or we can respond.
Yes. And those responses, they can make all the difference.
It's like we can choose to be victims of circumstance or like take control of how we react to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this whole pragmatic optimist thing really comes in. It's not about being all rainbows and sunshine, but it's also not about just expecting the worst.
Right. It's like being realistic but still hopeful.
Exactly. You acknowledge the problems, but you also believe you can overcome them. You got to have both.
Like having the right tools for the job. Sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver,
Yeah. And Monehin talks about this other important thing, especially in a crisis, which is connection, having those support systems around you.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. Like your family, friends, even your colleagues, people who have your back.
Totally. It's like having a safety net when you're doing something risky, knowing someone's there to catch you.
Yeah, you can take more risks if you know you're not alone.
And there's actually research on this, Social connection is linked to, better health and even living longer.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Humans are social creatures. We need each other.
Makes sense. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on crisis leadership, what are like the big takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest one is that how we respond to a crisis is a choice.
Right. We're not just puppets of fate. We have agency.
Exactly. We can freak out, deny it, hide away, or we can choose to stay calm, accept it, and be present for our people.
It's like choosing to be the leader you want to be, even when it's hard.
Yeah. And it's not about ignoring your emotions. You're going to feel stressed, scared, whatever. It's about acknowledging those feelings and then choosing how you ACT.
So it's about being both smart and compassionate.
Totally. Using both your head and your heart. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Reach out to those people who support you.
That makes a huge difference. Well, thanks for diving into this with me. I always learn so much from these conversations.
Me too. And for our listeners, we'll leave you with this. Monehin says, no strategy survives contact with a crisis. Change is going to happen. So how are you going to build the skills and resilience you need to not just survive, but actually thrive in those tough moments? Think about it.